How's it going, you guys? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about nutrition and mental health. So first and foremost, you must understand this whole paradigm, this whole idea of mental health disorders being caused by a neurochemical imbalance in the brain is not entirely true. But even if it was true, there's a couple of factors that you should still think about that allow you to solve mental health problems without relying on medication. So first and foremost, the foods that you eat supplies your body with the building blocks in which it uses to create these neurochemicals in the first place. So for example, let's say your doctor tells you you're low in serotonin. Well, protein foods give your body the amino acids like tryptophan that act as the building blocks that eventually create serotonin. And most Americans undereat protein significantly. They're not in alignment with optimal nutritional standards. They're only in alignment with the minimal intake of protein needed to survive and prevent protein deficiency symptoms like you see in some of these third world countries where people bloat up and they're extremely skinny and they experience sarcopenia, which is chronic pathogenic muscle loss. So what I'm getting at here is the recommended daily intake of protein for Americans is not equivalent to the optimal intake required for mental health and physical performance. And regardless, most Americans don't even follow government guidelines anyway. Most people are eating foods, heavily refined junk foods, which actually strip the body of nutrients. Not only do these refined carbohydrate foods, for example, they don't provide your body with any nutrients, but they also require your body to pull from whatever nutrient stores it has to metabolize energy from these refined carbohydrate foods. So that's very problematic because you end up with nutrient deficiencies that even eating a healthy whole foods diet sometime in the future cannot make up for the long-term nutrient deficiencies that these refined foods can cause, which means you're going to require supplementation eventually. And that's highly controversial even in the nutritional and supplemental kind of like health community. But anyway, your body needs amino acids from protein in order to create serotonin. So it'll take tryptophan from, the beef that you eat, or pretty much any protein food, even beans, contains tryptophan, just so you all know. You don't need to eat turkey, okay? This whole idea that turkey contains magical serotonin-inducing properties, or eating bananas for dopamine, this is all nonsense. Every food that contains amino acids, any whole food, is going to give your body a degree of tryptophan. But in my opinion, animal foods are the best source. That's my opinion. In particular, meat, because a lot of people are allergic to dairy. Regardless, your body needs amino acids from protein foods, or foods in general, in order to provide tryptophan. So then your body takes the tryptophan from these amino acids in these foods, and it actually will also combine with things like vitamin C, magnesium, vitamin B6, and some of these other micronutrients that you get from most whole foods. And tryptophan will turn into 5-hydroxytryptophan, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly. And then 5-hydroxytryptophan can turn into serotonin. It can also turn into melatonin. Now, I've made other more in-depth videos on the neurotransmitter cascade, breaking down the serotonin and melatonin cascade, breaking down GABA and glutamate, breaking down dopamine all the way into adrenaline and cortisol. So you can look those up. I'm going to have a psychology playlist on my channel where I put all those videos in. So if you're really interested in the more advanced, deeper stuff, you look at that one. But essentially, like I said, vitamin C, B6, magnesium, and then tryptophan from protein foods. Those all combine eventually to create serotonin and melatonin. So if you don't eat enough of these B6 and vitamin C, and you don't eat enough tryptophan in your diet, then what can happen is your sleep can suck. You can start to have really bad sleep problems because your body can't produce melatonin from the building blocks from these foods. You might start to develop depression so there are a lot of people who believe serotonin is a stress hormone. There are, and I don't align with that at all. I think it's going to depend on the degree and which receptors we're talking about and things like that. But that's not relevant to this video. What is relevant is if your doctor has you on serotonin reuptake inhibiting drugs, or drugs that basically promote the expression or the release of serotonin, realize you don't need these medications necessarily if serotonin is the problem. What you need is a diet that actually supports more production and optimization of serotonin. And so, literally just eating a healthy, balanced diet that's high in animal protein, in my opinion, flesh foods, and then also contains sources of vitamin C, B6, and magnesium, which in my opinion, for most people, that's going to be fruits, lots of fruits, in particular things like bananas and oranges, and grapes, I think, maybe, even those are very high glycemic. But things like tubers, okay, sweet potatoes, rosette potatoes, if you don't have a nightshade intolerance, those things tend to be very good for a lot of people. And if you're into this kind of thing, liver, which I eat a lot of, liver and eggs tend to be high in B6, folate, B1, and then they can supply other things as well. But the vitamin C and magnesium, that's going to be, it's kind of a deeper topic. But so that's the first thing. You need enough micronutrients and amino acids. Get them from beans, get them from whatever. And if that doesn't work, try the flesh foods. A lot of vegans and vegetarians are very stubborn, and they're suffering from health problems that might actually be resolved if they just eat meat. But you have all these gurus that are telling you otherwise. That was me when I was a vegan for a year, and it didn't do me any good to stay stuck in that paradigm. So from there, you've also got to understand that there are foods that can actually contribute towards mental health issues. Basically food allergies, but they're not actually allergies. We call these food intolerances. So, dairy and wheat can actually act like, so for example, dairy has proteins called casomorphins. Actually, casomorphins are byproducts created from the metabolism of some of these dairy proteins. And this can actually act like morphine on the body, okay? And this can cause things like sleepiness, brain fog, drowsiness. They can make you feel euphoric. And when you remove these foods, they can cause withdrawal symptoms. And so this is documented, and you should definitely look it up for more information. Casomorphins from the casein protein in milk. And certain grains actually have a similar thing. So from a mental health perspective, this is vitally important. We have psychoactive substances in these foods that can be contributing towards negative health problems. Obviously, caffeine. So I've said this before, and I'm an avid caffeine drinker. A lot of people's, so-called anxiety disorders might actually just be side effects of their caffeine usage. Most people are going to find that they're intolerant to caffeine past a certain point, and a lot of people might just not be able to consume caffeine. Caffeine is technically, it's technically a naturally created pesticide from some of these caffeinated plant foods. And it's going to cause unpleasant symptoms. That's what it's there for. It's what it's produced in the plant for, to, prevent the plant from being eaten. So if you really want to get to the bottom of your mental health, most people are not going to do this, try removing caffeine for a period of time and understand that you'll experience severe withdrawal symptoms for about a month. It's pretty intense. Alternatively, I find switching to green tea, switching to matcha green tea, because it contains L-theanine, which supports GABA and relaxation, might be a better idea, and it might help you wean off caffeine if that's what you want to do. So that's just kind of like my insight on that. Some other things, blood sugar imbalances. So just experiencing an episode of hypoglycemia, okay, can induce seizures. So literally, if you're eating refined carbohydrates for a long time, or if you're diagnosed pre-diabetes and whatnot, what can happen is the ups and downs of the blood sugar. It can make you feel tired, it can make you feel irritable, it can make you feel anxious, it can cause seizures. I had a relative that his doctor told him he was not diabetic, had nothing to worry about, but yet he experienced seizures and extreme symptoms of extreme episodes of hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, pretty frequently. So doctors are not always the best help. A lot of times they're a little too careless, and unless you're like full-blown dying of a disease, they're not going to diagnose you with it. And so that's pretty problematic. But understand that a lot of these refined foods especially can actually contribute towards things like seizures. And interestingly enough, ketogenic diets were used clinically for over 100 years, since the early 1900s, to put epilepsy, chronic seizures, into remission. Okay, and that's something to look into. And epilepsy is looked at as this very complicated, mysterious neurological disease, okay? But yet, for some reason, these low-carb diets, even a higher-protein Atkins diet, can put epilepsy into remission. But you don't hear about this very often. You hear that keto is like a fad diet, and it's dangerous, and it's going to kill you and all this. Side note, early ketogenic diets that were used for epilepsy were very unhealthy because they use a lot of vegetable oil and other things that can contribute towards heart problems. Just throw it out there. And also, such a low amount of protein is going to cause muscle wasting, and you don't actually need low protein on a keto diet. So, another thing, there's information now showing that Alzheimer's might actually be type 3 diabetes and might actually be caused by problems with metabolizing glucose in the brain. So, and I made an in-depth Instagram post on that, which I'm going to add to my highlights here soon, so that people can see some of the research. I added like 10 different studies on the subject. So there's also certain foods, and then there's certain foods you might be intolerant to. For example, nightshade vegetables. For some people, they get arthritis, and they get brain fog, and they get depression and sleep problems if they eat a lot of nightshades. Things like peppers and tomatoes and potatoes and goji berry and ashwagandha. And the reason is because there's an alkaloid in, it's basically an anti-nutrient. It's a plant defense molecule. It's called solanine, that can contribute towards inflammation. And not everyone is going to have the same food intolerances or problems with this. But if you do a elimination diet for a period of time, you may actually experience remission of some of these symptoms, and that might be something you want to be aware of, so that you know if you eat a lot of tomato sauce one day and you feel like garbage the next day, that you can link it back to the tomato sauce so that you don't think you're broken or something. Some people have chronic digestive illness, like I did, from things like whole grains. So I was experiencing irritable bowel syndrome when I used to eat a diet high in beans, nuts, and seeds, and whole grains. And so I would have all sorts of problems: brain fog, digestive illness, chronic bloating and gas. Couldn't go to sleep at night, probably because my body was trying to rid itself of these undigested foods. Chronic hives and psoriasis, just a giant histamine response. And when I eliminated these foods entirely, completely resolve those problems. So supply your body with the nutrients it needs, the amino acids, the vitamins and minerals, and then remove the foods that are irritating the system. You know, food intolerances and allergies, things with anti-nutrients, refined foods that rob your body of nutrients and create blood sugar fluctuations, and hormonal imbalances too. Things like PCOS and, even things benign prostate hypoplasia or whatever, basically where your prostate enlarges. All sorts of things can be created from, all sorts of imbalances can be created from these refined foods. High omega-6 diets can actually they can actually contribute towards inflammation, and inflammation has actually been linked towards brain problems and mood disorders. Reactive oxygen species, basically damage. Like if you think of inflammation as a healing response, being created from rusting in the body on a deep cellular level. Rusting, reactive oxygen species, oxidation, and that is the main contributor towards all diseases. Byproducts of these refined carbohydrates and these high omega-6, linoleic acid in the diet, things like high amounts of chicken fat, pork fat, and then vegetable oils, but not beef fat. These things contribute towards inflammation and rusting and things like that, which contribute towards depression. Anytime you hear inflammation, you need to understand it's actually reactive oxygen species and oxidation that we're talking about. But there's a huge link between inflammation or reactive oxygen species and depression and mental disorders. There's books written about it. And so it's mostly the refined foods that contribute towards pretty much all of these problems. It's a lack of protein, a lack of micronutrients, and an excess of refined foods is contributing towards all these problems. So you can take amino acid supplements in the short term if you're just now kind of learning about this. So for dopamine, you have things like phenylalanine, you have tyrosine, and you have mucuna-prurins, which is a source of L-dopa, which I've used. No side effects or withdrawals, not even a tolerance really. And then you have theanine and GABA to help produce GABA in the brain, which helps relax you. Then you have tryptophan and 5-HTP for serotonin. SAMe is also one that's recommended. A book that you can read for much more in-depth information. So this is the original, one of the very first books that really dial in the food and nutrition and holistic health component for mental disorders. I believe this was released in 2002. So Dr. Mark Hyman, Ultramind Solution, it includes surveys that you can use that ask you a list of questions that for each disorder that you might have, and it will help to identify nutrient deficiencies and problems with your diet that could be causing your symptoms. You actually find the survey still now to this day for free by searching Ultramind Companion. Okay, Ultramind Solution Companion PDF on Google, and Mark Hyman offers it for free, and it will help to solve your problems without even reading the book. But I highly recommend this book. But his information on things like saturated fat and whole grains and a high carb diet is pretty outdated. Remember, this is from the early 2000s. And he has since updated his information on saturated fats and high carb diets with his book, Eat Fat, Get Thin, which I think is much more in alignment with the type of diet that I personally advocate and follow. It's not technically keto, but it is it's solid. And you'll probably feel way better on this overall diet, but combine it with the principles in this book. And this goes into detail about why modern psychiatry is flawed and the real cause of most mental illness and all sorts of things. So I think this is recommended reading, especially if you are a professional in the field. Another good book by Mark Hyman is Food, What the Heck Should I Eat? And that one I like a lot because it's very unbiased and it talks about individualized choices and whatnot. Now, beyond that, understand that I'm not like a Mark Hyman worshiper. I just, out of all the functional medicine practitioners out there and nutrition gurus, he's the most unbiased. He has the best information that actually works, and he's probably the very first nutritional guru that I really got into and really still stick with this day. I used to follow Andrew Weil, but I don't think his information is accurate, and if you look at him, he doesn't look healthy these days. He's really fat, but he's very old too, and he's good for his age, and has a lot of good information too. But Mark Hyman is looking healthy these days. All this information in this video I got from multiple sources: intervention trials, meta-analysis, population data, and a lot of the information that I read in books like Mark Hyman, and lots of interviews and lectures and things from different professionals. So, highly recommend buying this book and get it used for like $6 online. I found these books, I actually bought this book in 2014 from Amazon, but I read it in Barnes & Noble for years before I bought it. This one I got from local Goodwill for like $2, and I think it's worth a lot more online now. This one I got from Goodwill, pretty cheap too, which is amazing because I've been reading through this book from Barnes & Noble bookstore for a long time. I find all these books on Amazon really cheap. So there's a lot more to discuss, so subscribe to my video for more. In fact, there's certain herbs and supplements that you can actually use in conjunction with this diet, with a healthy diet, in order to really, really jumpstart your mental health. And so I'll talk more about that soon. So subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and leave your questions down below. Let me know specific issues you're dealing with that you want me to make a video about, and I'll do my best to respond and make a video about it. Comment, subscribe, talk to me, and I'll talk to y'all next time.